Hey all, welcome back to the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. I'm Darren, I'm your host, and today we have a Thanksgiving special. I'm bringing back Jason Logsdon of Amazing Food Made Easy, and we're going to talk about the International Sous Vide Association, but we're also going to talk about Thanksgiving and holiday cooking. I'll be right back with Jason Logsdon.
Smoking, grilling, getting hot and hotter, sous vide and chilling from fire and water.
Hey all, before we get on to the show, I want to talk to you for a second about Instacart. Instacart's a great service that allows you to do all your grocery shopping online, and they can get you your groceries in as fast as 1 hour. They connect you with personal shoppers in your area that know your markets, and they can get them from your favorite stores. They find all the great buys and smart suggestions for you online to save you money. They pick the freshest produce, and they check your eggs and make sure they're not cracked. Check them out, guys. Instacart is offering free delivery on your first order of over $35 in the link below. Check them out, and now on to the show. Welcome back to the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. I'm Darren, I'm your host, and today we got a repeat visitor, Mr. Jason Logsdon of Amazing Food Made Easy. He was on our podcast a while back with Mike Licciardi, and he is a member of the International Sous Vide Association and all that. Jason, welcome back. Go ahead and just tell everybody where you're from and who you are real quick.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be back. Looking forward to it. I'm from Amazing Food Made Easy and the International Sous Vide Association. I've been writing about sous vide for about a decade. I had the first sous vide cookbook for home cooks after Thomas Keller's Under Pressure came out. And I've been doing a lot of sous vide for a really long time and really enjoying it.
Yeah, and your books and website are one of the first ones I found when I started dabbling in sous vide, and also the Facebook group Exploring Sous Vide, which is one of the largest Facebook groups talking about sous vide out there. So if you can join that group, you'll get a lot of information. That was one of the first ones I joined, and I'm still a member of today, and lots of good information, and it keeps continuing to grow. So like you said, you wrote several books now. I think you've got like 6 or 7 books on sous vide.
I'm up to 13 total books, and about probably 8 of them are sous vide specific.
And your website is also very well researched and has a lot of information. You also have an email course, I believe, for people who are just getting started and want to learn the basics.
Yep, the Sous Vide Quick Start course it's a 7-day email course that you get an email a day, and it kind of steps you through your first cooks and makes you feel comfortable with your machine. So, gives you the confidence to know what you're doing and turn out some good food.
This is a time of year people start looking for gift ideas for Christmas and start looking to use different cooking techniques that maybe they got for Christmas last year, a sous vide circulator. So we're going to talk a little bit about that kind of stuff as well. So, but that's why I'm releasing this one kind of a special edition, so we could talk about Thanksgiving and holiday cooking and gift ideas as well. Just from the time that you started playing around with and writing about sous vide and just that time, how has it changed? How have the different circulators and equipment changed?
It's been pretty crazy. So I got started when I got a copy of Thomas Keller's Under Pressure cookbook and a sous vide temperature controller that I could plug my crock pot into. And that's kind of how I got my start. I read Thomas Keller's book and I was like, this is really confusing and I don't know what he's talking about, because it's Thomas Keller and everything is to precision and for a 3-star Michelin level. It's written for professional cooks in general. So I did a lot of research, and there was not much out there at the time. And now, a decade later, there's, in addition to my books, there's Serious Eats writes about it with Kenji. Anova has good content. Darren and Firewater Cooking has a lot of great content. It's so much easier to get information about what you're doing and making sure you're doing it in a safe and really flavorful manner, which I think is one of the biggest things that's lowered the bar to entry for people. It's a lot easier to kind of get started. And then machines have gone. The temperature controller was $150, I think, at the time. And if you wanted a real circulator, you were looking at generally at Polyscience, which was $800 to $1,000. And now you can find a really cheap one for $40 and a good one for $100, which is just still blows my mind how inexpensive some of them are.
Exactly. I think they're not just getting cheaper. I think they're actually getting better. They're some of the manufacturers like Innova are starting to correct a lot of things that had some flaws with the original product, and adding different things as these get more popular and cheaper to make. They're adding additional options, like the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and they're expanding on the apps and stuff like that makes it a lot easier for people to get involved in it, and the containers are getting cheaper and easier, and things like that. I think they're people are getting a lot more comfortable with it because of that. There's more stuff that makes it easier for somebody who doesn't have a lot of knowledge to be able to feel comfortable working with this kind of stuff, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And a lot of people ask me, what machine should I buy? Why should I spend, say, $100 on an Innova or Gormia or a Joule when I could get something off of Amazon for $40? And, I have relationships with a lot of the different manufacturers, so I'm obviously biased compared to some of the knockoffs that just come out. But what I tell people is the extra money you're spending isn't buying you that much better of a machine in a lot of cases. One of the cheap ones will usually work as well as an Innova does, but it's buying you the peace of mind that if it stops working, that you can get it fixed. There are people that work at Innova that care about the brand, and at Gormia and Joule and these, that they build up a company where it's very easy to outsource a really cheap circulator on Alibaba and drop ship it on Amazon and not even have a company or really care about your customers. And that's why I usually suggest, go with one of these larger brand names, because they're going to stand by their machines in a lot of cases. And I think that's where a lot of the differentiation does come from now, that that Innova, if it breaks, they're going to replace it and they'll help you solve your problem, which adds a lot of peace of mind to it.
Exactly. And, I've had people, companies send me things to demo that, the temperature's not even right. If you verify the temperature, it read right on the unit itself, but if you verify it with a instant read thermometer, it's, 3 degrees off, so, just the reliability of the unit sometimes are just not there, so saving that extra $20 is not really worth it if you're, like you said, you can't get it fixed if it needs to be, or replaced, or you can't trust the temperatures, or it's not circulating the water like it should be. And especially if it's a company that's not really dedicated to sous vide at all, or it's just like, hey, these are popular, I'm going to go out and make something like this. At least Innova, they're dedicated to sous vide cooking. They just came out with a great container. They came out with a great lid that fits on the pots. They come out with a new little vacuum sealer that works really well, that's affordable, so they're dedicated to the cooking method of sous vide, definitely.
Yeah, I think the people that have expertise, and there are several brands out there that I've worked with, and I have relationships with them because there's companies and they care about the sous vide community, where a lot of the other really cheap knockoffs don't even have companies necessarily, much less get involved in the community. But there's a lot of new ones out there that are committed, like Vesta Precision's done a lot. VacMaster has some lower entry level ones now. Sous Vide Supreme, these brands that a lot of people have heard of before. There's a reason why you keep hearing them over and over again, and that's because they were at our conference. They stand by their equipment. They work with chefs. They work with home cooks, and they care about sous vide and their customers, not just making a quick buck at someone's expense.
Right. They're not just throwing it up on Amazon, trying to sell a couple hundred units and then move on to the next popular thing. So,
yeah.
All right. So let's talk about we talked about this when we introduced you, the International Sous Vide Association, which is something that you and Mike Lashardi started, and we talked about it on our last podcast, like a year and a half, 2 years ago. And then you had the first ever Sous Vide Summit in July that was held in just outside of Pennsylvania, or was it outside of Philadelphia, correct?
Yep, it was in Delaware, just outside of Philadelphia.
Yeah. So I've talked to a few people that were there, and I've heard nothing but great things on something that was a, first ever, conference. A lot of people were like, they couldn't believe that it went so smoothly, and all the, speakers were how good they were, and all the people that showed up, and all the different companies that participated in something that was such a brand new thing. And a lot of them even said that they like it better than some of the industry conferences that have been around for years. So how did you guys put all this together?
That's really great to hear. We put a lot of time and effort into it, trying to make sure it was a great experience. We understand that people want to learn about sous vide, but you can only learn so much about a single method of cooking over 2 or 3 days without wanting to, pull your hair out. So we tried to make it a really fun, educational, but have a lot of good demos, a lot of fun people there. And then we had 2 amazing receptions. Allen Brothers provided Wagyu beef for the first reception. And so we had all of our sponsors cook a bunch of great, amazing steaks with, Meathead Goldwyn on the searing grill. And it was a pretty amazing time. And our title sponsor was Crea and Cuisine Solutions, who are basically, people think I've been doing sous vide for a long time because I've been doing it for a decade. They've been doing it for almost 50 years now, which just blows my mind. And they catered the entire second reception, which was, I think there's 8 different gourmet buffet stations of just types of sous vide cooking that I've never tried before. So we tried to have a lot of this kind of entertainment, lots of great food, lots of good drink and infusions. And then we got lucky that Mike and I sat down and said, who do we want to hear from in the sous vide community? And we had people like Dave Petranczyk from Polyscience, and Scott Heimendinger, the Seattle food geek, who I learned stuff about sous vide from when I was just getting started. And some really exciting people that are big names in the industry. And a lot of them said yes, which honestly surprised us a little bit because we were a new event just getting started for the first time, and they didn't know us in a lot of cases. And so it was great that all these people came together and were like, yeah, I love sous vide. I'd love to talk about sous vide, and I'll come to the conference and contribute. And it was a really great feeling that we put a lot of work behind the scenes in. Mike did a ton. He's really the brains of making sure the conference functioned. And we put up what we thought was going to be a really fun event. But you still have to have all the attendees, and you have to have the speakers and the sponsors be a part of it. And when they showed up, there was just some amazing sponsors there. The people that were working with the booths, Chef Villegas and Elizabeth Kearney, Dave and Conrad from Polyscience, just these amazing individuals that were upbeat and friendly and talking to people. And then the speakers were just really strong speakers, but they also went to the receptions, talked to the attendees, had a really good time, and didn't just speak and leave. They were hanging out and being a part of the conference. And that made it really fun for the attendees, who it felt more like a party in a lot of cases. And I think they had a great time, and there's a really welcoming, fun environment, I think, for pretty much everyone. And that was really great for us to see that we could only do so much planning, but it was really the attendees, the sponsors, and the speakers that made the conference what it was.
Yeah, one of the things when I discussed the conference with Meathead Goldwyn, he was on a couple of weeks ago on the podcast. He said he learned so much from it, and he said he was the one taking notes, with everybody else. Even though he was a speaker there, like you said, he wasn't just there to speak and then take off. He was there to learn, and even some of the other people that I talked to that were there said that they were impressed with Meathead, just because he was at every speaker's speech and every event, and just taking notes and learning and asking questions, and also participating in cooking and all that. But I think a lot of them were like that as well. They didn't just speak and leave. They actually, found things they could learn that, they didn't just come there to, I'm too good to listen to anybody else kind of thing. They were there to learn and on their own as well.
Definitely. It was nice to see those people out there and enjoying it. And that was one of the benefits of having some of the really high caliber speakers that we have, is that we had AJ Shaler from Crea, who consults with 3-star Michelin restaurants and that works with some of the top chefs in the world to fine tune their sous vide techniques. She knows so much about sous vide that even someone that's been writing about it for a decade like me learns stuff every time she goes up to talk. And so you'd see people like her and Dave from Polyscience that they would say like, oh, this is what I do. And you would see all the home cooks, you start scribbling, and you'd see the professional chefs in the audience scribbling, and you'd see some of the sponsors scribbling. They're like, ooh, I need to remember this for later, because I had no idea till they said it on stage. So it was really neat seeing some of those. Just when you think like, well, what hasn't been done with sous vide? You're like, well, there is a whole lot of stuff that hasn't been done that's just out there that we don't know about yet.
Yeah, I had AJ on just recently as well, and she was a great guest. And she, just from talking to her, on the podcast, I learned so much. But she's directly, works under, Dr. Gusteau, so Bernard Gusteau, who's the father of sous vide. So she works with it every single day, and she puts together programs for restaurants and chefs and companies and municipalities and all that on sous vide. So yeah, and even she was impressed with the conference. So that tells you something when an industry leader like that is impressed with something that you guys probably were just like you like me. I think of myself, I'm just a guy who does a podcast and a Facebook group. People don't want to listen to me, but people do, and people will learn from you, and people will actually respect you if you know what you're talking about. So
I think that was one of the most surprising things to me, is that Korea and Cuisine Solutions wanted to be so involved. And AJ and Gerard did several presentations, and they were around the conference a lot. And they're very, very knowledgeable people, which I was expecting. But they were so friendly and down to earth, and they treated us like peers the entire time. They never looked down on us being random schmoes who are hosting a conference, especially compared to them. And it was really refreshing how just down to earth and great of people they were. I couldn't recommend, if anyone out there is looking at any of their classes or any of their services, they were an amazing organization to work from a behind the scenes perspective. They were so professional and nailed every single thing they did. It was really inspiring to just see an organization that's that knowledgeable and that big of a deal be that humble, which was really cool.
Yeah. And to talking to her on the podcast, I got from it that she remembers when she was, starting out, and when she came to Crea, she thought she knew, everything about sous vide, and she was just blown away about how much she didn't know, even though she used it all the time, and I think everybody can be like that. If you have that attitude that you're always learning, no matter how long you've been doing something or how much you think that's the type of attitude you should have. You'll be a better teacher as well. So definitely they know what they're doing. But they don't treat you like you said, they don't look down their nose at you, for sure. Yeah. So what else came out of what else came out of the conference that you guys didn't expect or that's kind of surprised you?
It basically hit all of our best case scenario expectations. Of everyone we've talked to seemed to have a great time, from the attendees to the sponsors and speakers. And it really helped motivate us. Again, it's a lot of work. So it motivated us for next year. We're going to be in San Francisco. I think it's August 21st through the 23rd. And we're bringing on hopefully a lot of good speakers again, and starting to plan the receptions to make sure they live up to last year's fun. And being in San Francisco should be really nice. There's Kenji's out there and Nova's out there. We're working on getting some of them involved a little deeper in the conference as well. We're adding a industry track this year, which will be for like the people that don't cook sous vide, but their organizations use sous vide. So the head of hotels, that how sous vide helps with their sourcing, the head of marketing for sous vide manufacturers. And then we're also adding more of a dedicated beginner track before the conference starts for the people that don't really know sous vide, but they want a kind of a crash course into it before the conference starts. So we're looking forward to adding that and having a little more professional content as well to bring in some chefs. So expanding a little bit, but trying to kind of hit the different groups of people that use sous vide and want a little more detailed information.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I try to do, and I know you do, and some of the others on the Facebook groups, is try to show how sous vide is not just a utensil or a appliance in the kitchen like a Instapot or a George Foreman grill or something like that. It's actually a method. Because people get that in their mind. Well, I got, one of these sous vide sticks. I don't know what to do. It's like, they think it's like one of those, emulsion blenders, it's not, it's a whole method, and it can do so much more than just cook a perfect steak or cook a perfect chicken breast, which people kind of associate it with. And I think this, the Sous Vide Summit, it's great that the industry people are also involved, but I think it helps spread the word to people to really look at sous vide, a lot deeper than what they kind of just see on the surface. Do you agree with that?
It was fun. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And it was really fun at the receptions that we had, especially with the Allen Brothers reception, that we just had some steak that was steak, cooked steak with a peach bourbon glaze on it. It was what Elizabeth Kearney did. And it's fantastic, but it's, Wagyu flank steak. We kind of know what to expect with that. And then at the second reception, we had Kreia did these, they call it sushi, so SOUSHI. They do a slow poached tomato with the sous vide, and then they layer it over sushi rice with vinegar and put a little soy sauce on it, and it tastes like tuna sushi, but it's vegan and tomato based, and it's just things like that. You're like, this is ridiculous that this was done with sous vide, and it's just so different and out there that it's not the type of thing that I would ever think of trying on my own, but tasting it there and seeing people's reactions, you're like, there's so much you can do with this type of technology, just as one more, tool in your tool belt.
Exactly. Yeah. And I have fun experimenting with things like that. And even just, with the way I do it with barbecue and grilling, it's just, I can think of stuff to, try out and change all the time using it. And people ask me, that's one of the first things that when they first, especially the barbecue guys, when they first try to, tell them about how sous vide and barbecue can work. And it's just like, well, what can it do that a smoker can't do? And it's like, can you make a brisket medium rare, nice and smoky on your smoker? No. Well, I can. I mean, that's, and that's not the only thing it can do. It can do a lot more. It can produce a superior product. Is it going to replace another cooking method? No, you can still use that other cooking method. And you can, just like, braising is still going to be braising, frying is going to still be frying. It's just another method you can use, and you can combine it with some of those other methods like sous vide fried chicken. You can get your chicken all nice and cooked internally, and then get a nice crispy crunch, crust on it on the outside by frying it. So it's just something that can actually help you, cook something that maybe you're not comfortable making yourself, because like with fried chicken, I've always had the problem where the outside was done, but the inside wasn't done. You had to cook it to death pretty much to get the inside done, and your outside was all, burnt, and, if you didn't do it right. So it's just spreading that, spreading that information out there is one of the things I love to do. So.
Yeah. I always think it's interesting when people say, well, I can cook a steak on my grill, so why do I need a sous vide? And it's like, do you not need a pan then because you can cook on your grill? Do you not need an oven because you could cook a turkey on your grill? Like, what if it's raining? We're not saying you have to, if you buy a sous vide machine, that it's the only way to cook a specific type of meat for the rest of your life. It just gives you one more option depending on what your priorities are that day. Sometimes you might want to go out there and smoke a brisket for 8 to 10 hours and manage the fire and do that. And other times you might be busy and have to run errands all day, but you still want a brisket later, and so you can sous vide it and just finish it for an hour on the grill when you're finishing up the sides. It all depends what you're currently trying to do and what tool is best to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish in that moment.
Exactly. It's called options.
Yeah, imagine that.
I mean, everybody loves options and just learning and trying new things. And like I said, once you dive into it, and try to expand on it and see what it can do instead of just getting that, I heard it does good steaks and that's all I'm going to use it for. To me, I just have fun doing that kind of stuff because I love to cook and I love to try new things and I love to experiment a lot. So.
Yeah, I'm the same way. And I think the convenience of it is one of the things that gets me a lot. I made a sous vide risotto the other night, and it's like, was it the best risotto I've ever made in my life? No. It took me 5 minutes of active time to make it, though. And it was at the end of a long day of work, and I spent 0 time over a pot, 0 time stirring anything. And for 5 minutes of effort, it was really freaking good compared to 40 minutes of stirring and monitoring the pot.
Yeah, and it's like, making mashed potatoes, or even just like I like to make, new potatoes. You don't have to boil the potatoes in water and lose most of their flavor. I mean, you can actually, get a better result by using the sous vide and having, to cook potatoes in a sous vide bag, in a vacuum bag in a sous vide, and then compare it to something that was boiled or steamed, it's a totally different flavor. You can really taste the potatoes a lot better. It's just, it tastes so much better that way than boiling or steaming, all the flavor out of it. So,
Yep.
that's what I try to make people understand. It's like, you got to understand if you're braising, okay, you're pretty much slow boiling something in a liquid it's taking a lot of the flavor out of the meat. It's trying to infuse some other flavors, but you're still taking a lot of that flavor out of the meat. Where if you're cooking it in a sous vide, in a bag, in a water bath, it's staying in there. It's staying inside the meat. It's staying with the meat. So, same way with the vegetables. The vegetables can come out so much brighter and crisper and more flavorful because you're not having to cook them in water or steam. So.
Definitely.
All right. Well, let's take a little break here for an ad, and then we'll come back and we're gonna talk about what people can do for the holidays coming up, because I know a lot of people that are always going to ask around this time of year, how do I cook stuff? So we'll be right back with Jason Logsdon from Amazing Food Made Easy. Hey, all, I want to welcome again Inkbird as our sponsor for the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. Inkbird has more than just barbecue thermometers and instant read thermometers that I've talked about before. Inkbird just came out with a Wi-Fi sous vide circulator that I've been using for a few weeks now that works pretty good. Has over 1,000 watts of power. Has an app that has many times and temps for meats and vegetables. Also has onboard times and temps for meats and vegetables. Runs really quiet. Fits most regular sous vide containers that are the size of the Innovas. So check it out. Look below. There's a link with a code for 30% off of the Amazon price. That makes it under $60 right now. So check out the Inkbird Wi-Fi sous vide circulator in the description below. Back to our program. All right, we're back with Jason Logsdon from Amazing Food Made Easy, and we're going to talk about turkey and pretty much any kind of holiday food that people might want to make using the sous vide. I'm sure, people this time of year start looking for gifts too. They start looking for gifts for people for the holidays. So, this information is always great for somebody who may have got a sous vide circulator last year and hasn't really played around with it yet too much. And now they want to get out there. And I know that I recently started getting questions in my Facebook group about turkeys and stuff. So let's talk about it. I know that you have a course out there where last year you pretty much cooked everything, the whole meal sous vide. Let's talk about that a little bit.
So I love sous vide turkey. I think there is something neat about having an entire roasted turkey come out of the oven and you carve it up at the table. And that's super impressive. And if you can pull that off to a decent level, that's, more power to you. for me, it was always stressful, and trying to break down a turkey, because I would only do a whole turkey once a year, was stressful, and overcooking or undercooking. To me, it was such just this point of stress in a holiday that I was hanging around with my family, and I was worried the whole time. And once I started using sous vide especially for Thanksgiving, it's just, there is zero stress. There's the time management so much easier because it's done when you want it to be done. And it's something that I suggested to my parents and my in-laws. And I was like, can we try this just 1 year? And I know it's different, but let's give it a shot. And they were about 3 bites in when everyone had said, yeah, we're never going back to another turkey again. You're cooking this for us every single year from here on out. It's just so moist and tender and so much more flavorful than oven roasting one in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and I know the convenience of, like you said, it's done when you want it to be done, and it's cooked at the perfect temperature. You can't overcook a sous vide turkey unless you try to. You actually have to try to.
Yep.
And I know I did a couple videos last year where I did one spatchcocked. I did one, cut it up into pieces and did the white meat and dark meat at different temperatures. And I even I did a whole chicken. I'll probably try to do a whole smaller turkey this year as well, just to show it can be done. It's a little bit more complicated to do a whole one because you got the cavity to worry about. But yeah, just the fact that you don't have to sit there and try to wait for that little thermometer that pops out of the, butterball, and it's still overdone. By the time that pops out, it's still overdone, so.
Yep.
And trying to put it in a paper bag. My mom used to try to cook, the turkey in the paper bag, saying that made it moist or whatever. But it's, some of the crazy things people have done. The deep frying, is it's always fun to watch people setting their house on fire every year, trying to deep fry a turkey, trying to make the perfect turkey when, sous vide, like you said, is so easy to do. About the only thing I get questions, how do I fit a whole turkey in a bag? And, first thing I always tell them is you can get the big expandable, food saver bags work great. So, but
what I currently do, my current process, we go down to Philly and generally eat Thanksgiving the day after we get down there. And so at my house, I'll buy the turkey. I'll break the turkey down into the white and dark meat and bag them separately. And then I'll cook the dark meat at my house, chill it, and then I'll take it down to Philly. And then when we get there, I'll throw it in the sous vide machine in the morning that we're going to eat, the white meat. And by the time we're ready to eat, whenever that is, it's going to be cooked, ready to go. About an hour before we want to eat, I throw the dark meat in just to reheat. And there's zero stress. I'm not trying to make sure that my mother-in-law gets the right turkey or trying to carve something up last minute or make sure there's room in the oven. I know everything's already bagged, already together by the time I get there. I just have to toss it in and heat it basically, which is really convenient for me.
Now, how do you normally finish yours? Do you put them in a broiler? Do you convection oven? Do you just use a Searsall?
I've done several different ways. The torch definitely works. I think the broiler helps crisp up the skin a little bit more. I do have a few recipes for if you really want crispy skin. I'll take it off and then I'll put it on a sheet pan and bake it, and you get like super crispy, almost glass-like skin, which is pretty interesting. I've lately been making a lot of turkey roulades, so I'll butterfly the white meat. I'll put some seasonings in the middle and I'll roll it up in the skin and then sous vide it. And then I'll finish it off in maybe about a half inch to an inch of oil. So it's like shallow fry it to really crisp up the skin on the outside when it comes out. And I think that's a good way to kind of serve something that you think, well, we don't have the whole turkey coming out, it doesn't look good anymore. When you bring out a full turkey breast roulade, it looks really fancy and it looks super cool and very presentable. So I'll do that. Then I'll have the thigh and leg still attached. So I don't break them down fully, and I'll generally cook them under the broiler and break them out. So you still have this platter that's got huge hunks of of turkey on it, and it looks like a ton of meat, but a little more upscale, a little fancier, and it's perfectly cooked, which is honestly what really matters when you're serving friends and family.
I definitely, yeah, I think everybody would rather have a perfectly cooked turkey than one that looks pretty. Um, looks are always, everybody says, yeah, you eat with your eyes too. But to me, I'd rather it taste good and be perfectly done instead of looking pretty and be dry or flavorless. But I've had great luck, spatchcocking the turkey, cooking it sous vide, and then finishing it on a pellet grill at a high temperature at over 375, and you leave it on there for a half hour, 45 minutes, and it crisps the skin up. It's not crispy like fried, but it's nice enough to where for some reason, and I think it's more like evaporative cooling, the internal temperature of the turkey doesn't rise as fast when you put it on a hot smoker or grill like that to finish it. It doesn't really, within that 45 minutes, the internal temperature doesn't rise maybe 1 or 2 degrees. So, and people always go, oh, you're going to, as soon as you put it on there, the temp's going to go out of this world. It's going to dry it out, but it doesn't. For some reason, it's kind of like the stall on a brisket or a pork butt. When you're smoking, it stays at the internal temp that you cooked it to for a long enough time that you can finish the outside, take it out, and have a perfectly cooked turkey. So I'll probably do that again for this year. But that always turns out
really tasty.
Yeah, and you get that
sounds amazing,
and it's not over smoked, because if you use a pellet grill with the applewood pellets or pecan pellets, it doesn't over smoke it. Where I've had over smoked turkey, where people just try to smoke a turkey regularly on a smoker, and you can just you bite into it, and it's like eating an ashtray, because they got poultry takes smoke so easy, and it can overpower poultry really, especially if you use a stronger wood like oak or mesquite or something like that, or hickory, and it can really just make it so where it's not very appetizing. You bite into it, it's too much smoke, so, but that pellet grill and putting a sous vide spatchcock turkey on it, it gives you just enough smoke and just enough crispy skin and just a perfect interior meat. That's my preferred way to do it now. So
that sounds really, really good. And I'm personally like a huge skin guy. I love turkey skin, and we're a huge gravy family in general. And so to make that much gravy when you're not roasting a bird, I always make a turkey stock ahead of time. And to do that, I get like turkey wings and legs that are pretty inexpensive, and I roast them before I make the stock. And I just make sure that I salt it well, have it dried off, and then I roast it long enough that I get really good crispy skin. And it's 3 days before Thanksgiving when I make the stock generally, but I get my skin fill when I'm picking stuff off as I'm making the turkey stock for the gravy later. So that's one way that I get to scratch my own itch, even if the rest of the family doesn't get to enjoy it too much.
Gotcha. So let's talk about side dishes though. So everybody, the protein is always the biggest thing with sous vide, but you don't see a lot of people talking about the sides. And the course that you have is pretty much everything is cooked sous vide except for the even the dessert. So let's talk about the side dishes a little bit.
So the side dishes I did in the course were an asparagus, which is super quick and easy in sous vide, and it makes it, especially for thicker asparagus, it's really easy to cook it through and tenderize it without overcooking the outside, which is something that can be challenging. Mashed potatoes or mashed sweet potatoes are really easy with sous vide, and green beans is the other one that I do a lot. That it's just really convenient. And again, it's like, are these things that you can cook on the stovetop or in the oven? Yeah. At Thanksgiving, when you have 8 different dishes, do you have room on the stovetop or in the oven? A lot of times you don't. So it's convenient to be able to cook them in one place and not have to worry about stove space, especially because I never do Thanksgiving in my own kitchen. So it's always a challenge to find room in whosever kitchen I'm in. So it makes it a lot easier for me. One of the things that I love, though, is doing sous vide infusions. People hear me talk about that. And if you were at the summit, I did 2 different infusions for the reception. And the one is like an apple pie bourbon, that it is this spicy apple infused bourbon that you can make a liqueur out of. You can serve it in old fashions. And it's something that even if you're going to like a Friendsgiving instead of a Thanksgiving, you can make that and show up with it. And it's going to be something that no one else is going to have, and everyone's going to really love drinking.
I was going to talk about that when we started getting into gift ideas, because to me, that's something that you could do that nobody else is. Like you said, to go to a Friendsgiving, or, you go over to your family and you give them something that you made like that. It's nobody else is going to give them that. And that's something totally different that they would, not think of, give them some spiced rum or limoncello or something that you made using the sous vide that they can't go to the store and buy,
Yeah. And nice glass bottles are like $2 a piece, and you can get enough to fill up a glass bottle for the alcohol and the spices for probably $2, and you could put together a gift for $5 to $10, and it's going to be homemade. It's going to have your love in it, and people are going to be impressed because it's going to be super flavorful and really interesting that they don't, like you're saying, they can't get anywhere else.
And it's a conversation piece as well. Hey, my friend made me this, or, my cousin made me this. And you believe that? It's not like a macaroni picture, like a homemade homemade birthday card or when you were a kid. This is something, or, a pound or a fruit cake, it's something that, especially if you get something that they actually drink a lot, if they drink, vodka or something, you make them an infused vodka, and it's like, hey, this is better than buying the Absolute Citron or whatever, so.
Yeah, last year I did a cranberry apple vodka for martinis and Cosmos, and it's just so nice to have something that's flavored with real flavors instead of fake flavors like a lot of them are, and it's just a lot more refreshing, and you have control over the flavor profile, and you can take it in so many different directions, which is always really fun, I think, to experiment.
Definitely. So what else? Let's go back to the holiday meals and talk about some desserts that you could do using the sous vide, because we talked about side dishes, but I know desserts, people really don't think about that with sous vide.
Yeah, people never generally think about desserts, and it's something that I didn't experiment with for probably the first 6 or 7 years I was sous videing. So I understand people not doing it, but I've been diving into it a lot more lately. I've been teaching these hands-on cooking classes for sous vide with groups of 6 to 8 people that come over, and almost everyone's favorite dish of the entire meal that they make is the chocolate pâte de crèmes it's just a sous vide pâte de crème. It's basically chocolate egg yolk goodness. That's just the richest dish, and it takes probably about 15 minutes to put together, and you put them in, I like to use the really small 4-ounce mason jars. And so everyone kind of gets their own individual serving in a cute little mason jar. You can put some whipped cream on it, or you can give it as a gift even. And it's something that's really neat and interesting that you can do traditionally, but it's a lot more convenient to do at sous vide. Creme brulees are amazing. They're really easy to do with sous vide, and you have a lot of variety. I've done white chocolate. I've done pumpkin creme brulees for Thanksgiving. It's pretty easy to flavor them in different ways. And I think last year I did a sweet potato pie in a jar. So there's a mason jar again, sweet potato pie in there. You can roll into Thanksgiving with 8 to 10 little jars, and everyone's going to have their own dessert. And it's going to be something that they're not getting from the pie shop down the road. It's homemade. It's going to be pretty dang good, and it's going to blow people's minds when they find out that you did it in a sous vide machine, because it's not what people picture sous vide accomplishing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people just really, when they think of sous vide, they don't really think of what it's actually doing and why it works so well. They don't understand that you're cooking to a precise temperature and how important that can be on some fragile things like, creme brulee, or, a custard or a cheesecake or stuff like that. Or even, the vegetables, like I was saying earlier, that how cooking at a precise temperature can make, asparagus so much better than trying to steam it or boil it, because you're cooking it to an exact temperature. You're not trying to catch it while it's on the way up, as far as the heat, the internal heat of the vegetable is, and I think that kind of stuff, like, like you said, all these desserts and stuff can start to get their wheels start turning in their head, about this is why it works so well.
Yeah, it's that low temperature precision can be really effective for custards and creams. I know Mike has a cheesecake recipe that's sous vide, and generally when you make cheesecake, you put them in a pan with water and low oven temperature to try to create enough steam to make sure they don't overheat and nothing burns. And with sous vide, you just set the temperature you want, and it's going to cook it at that temperature. There's no overcooking, there's no burning or scalding, and it makes it pretty easy to do a lot of these things that need that kind of consistent temperature over a long period of time. And a lot of desserts actually need that, which was pretty surprising to me.
Yeah, and like I said, that's why it works so well. And then I think once people start getting that idea that, that's where it gets into, wow, I can do this for that. I can that's, I can start, trying out new things, and then they start using those sous vide a lot more. So let's talk about gift ideas. I mean, right now, you can go on Amazon and there's a ton of sous vide stuff out there. And I'm sure you've tried out a few different things. So what do you think the number one thing should be that somebody who's never sous vide, I want to give somebody a sous vide to start sous vide. They've never done it before. What should I look at to give them?
What I generally recommend, if you want to get someone everything they need to sous vide, I would get them a circulator, either an Innova or a Joule or a Gourmet, one of those probably. They're well-known brands. I would get them a container just because they're $15 to $20, and you can get a lid that comes with it and it's fit. And I'd get them a cookbook. I'd obviously recommend mine because I am partial to my cookbooks, but my Modern's Cooking Made Easy sous vide book is a bestseller on Amazon, and we've sold thousands and thousands of copies that people like it. But if you get them those things, they're going to be able to be cooking the day that they get it because of the recipes and the descriptions of how to cook things in there. And it's, for a foodie, it's something that they're really going to enjoy as a gift.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think to get somebody started, you get them a circulator and a container and then let them run. They don't have to have a vacuum sealer. They can use Ziploc bags. They can, really don't need a whole lot to get started. But a book, especially a basic book, don't get them, Thomas Keller's book, like you said. Get them something that's geared towards, some teaching somebody how to get started, because you can't just, when you're learning math, they don't give you an algebra book right away, right? You got to learn how to, 1 + 1 is 2. So you got to, take baby steps. But that's why I think things like your email course and just your website and even the Facebook groups overall can help people get started and start, exploring, more. Then the more they do, and then the more interested they can get the more complicated books and start expanding that. So,
yeah, I think the most important thing about, either giving them a book or directing them to a specific website is important, because I think there's so much information out there now. It's the opposite of when I got started, that not all the information out there is good. And there are certain websites, I've tried really hard to make sure mine is one of them, that has up-to-date current information that's going to really teach you. And there's others out there, like Serious Eats does a really good job with their stuff. The Chef Steps does a great job as well. And pointing to some like that they know what they're doing, they explain it in a good way, and they're reputable, I think is important. Because I have looked at some manufacturers' instruction guides, and I think their recommendations are junk. Some of them are really bad, and some of them aren't safe and are not clear. And so just Googling something isn't always going to give you the right answer. There's several out there, and I think if you're giving someone a sous vide thing, you can direct them to a site that is reputable and is going to give them the information they need to safely use it, but also use it in a confident manner, which I think is really important.
Yeah. And I think safety is a big thing, because that's the one thing, people like to hit on is the danger zone. Sometimes you're cooking in what is called the danger zone that, the government says is, food shouldn't stay in a long time, but it's definitely, you got to not fly by the seat of your pants. A lot of times you got to, look up and read and understand why things are the way they are and how they work. Like with Douglas Baldwin's, pasteurization charts. I always point people, don't read the whole book and try to absorb everything. Just there's guidelines in there to use to let you understand what is a safe temperature and time for certain things and why thickness of the meat matters, because you got to understand that it takes time for that, meat to get the temperature all the way through it, even though it is in a water bath. So it's definitely a big thing. And, the whole cooking in plastic, I think, that still comes up every once in a while. I don't know why, but it still comes up every once in a while. But that's not the safety issue that people should really be looking at. It's that making sure you're cooking safely. You're not cooking at 122 degrees for 1 hour and thinking it's pasteurized and cooked.
Yep. Or you're not cooking it for 122 degrees for 48 hours because you like a rare brisket.
Right.
That's not good either.
It's not good either. But and I think, that's the biggest thing I see, especially in the Facebook groups and stuff, where the interaction is people trying to figure that out and thinking that, hey, if I cooked this chicken breast for an hour at 140 degrees and it came out like this. And it's like, well, where did you get that temperature and time? Because all the guides I look at don't have that. And sometimes they just do. They fly by the seat of their pants, and you got to explain to them, well, really an hour is not a long enough time for any protein to cook at a low temperature. You're just warming it up. So you're just eating pretty much raw, uncooked meat at that time, point in time. So
that's one of the things I've really tried to focus on in my books, and especially the Sous Vide Quick Start course, that I tried to boil down, like, what exactly do you need to know when to get started to be safe, and then present that information in an accessible way. And then later on, you can build on that and really get into some of the hows and whys. But here's these bullets that are really important, and trying not to overcomplicate it with the science behind it and a lot of the more scientific things that people discuss and the reasons why. I try to really present it as, here's very clearly kind of the guidelines. And once you understand the guidelines and you have cooked a few times, now you want more information. Here's where you can find some more information. Here's where you can really dive into Douglas Baldwin and learn about the thermal death curves and the differential equations he uses to figure out the thickness of, temperature heating and all the awesome stuff like that. But I definitely try to keep that information away from people just getting started, because they look at it and just go, yeah, I can't do this. This is complicated. It's like, it's not that complicated if you focus on the basics at first.
Right. That's like I said, you don't just, when you first start doing math, you don't start, with algebra and calculus. You got to learn how to do the basics first. And that's one of the things too, I try to, tell people. And once you should get the basics down, then you can figure out what different time and temp ranges, work for you personally on doneness and texture and all that on particular proteins, because you still get people come in and go, what's the perfect time and temperature for, a ribeye? It's like, that could depend on the person. It's just like who likes medium rare and well done. And, who likes ribeye, who prefers filet. It's a personal preference. And once you start figuring adjusting the times and temps a little bit here and a little bit there within the safe zones, and go, okay, I particularly like to do, chuck roast at 134 for 36, because it breaks down the fat a little bit more than 131, and I think it comes out, a lot better product than if it 131 for 36 or 48 hours. So, but it's personal preference to me. But when you start getting the basics down, then you can start doing that. And that's why I always try to tell people is that there's no perfect, time and temp for everybody. It might be perfect for me, but you might like it a little bit different. So experiment.
And honestly, there's so much, like, the things that we don't tell beginners, and some people try to, and I think it overwhelms people, is that there's a variety. Like, yeah, you might like yours at 134 and I might like mine at 131, but we get meat from different places. I might like yours at 134 as well. Like, are you having a select steak or choice or prime or Wagyu? Because that's going to depend on the temperature and time potentially of how you like it. A select strip steak is very different than a Wagyu strip steak. And just the same cut of meat with the same personal preference from, a different ranch even can have different results when it comes out. And because sous vide allows you to replicate things every time, you start to notice those differences. And that's why your recommendations might not work for me. Even if honestly, we like the exact same thing, we might have different meat. And so we need to cook it slightly differently to achieve the same results.
Exactly. Great point. Well, all right. It was been great. I want to talk about your turkey course. So I'm going to put that in the description below. People can sign up for your 100% sous vide Thanksgiving it's a Thanksgiving meal, right?
Yep. It's the Thanksgiving dinner video course, and I'll have a discount on there for your listeners to get 50% off.
Great. And walks you through from appetizers all the way down to dessert.
Yep. And infusions as well. So
great. How long is the complete course?
I believe it's 40 videos.
Oh, but they're not like full length hour-long videos, correct?
No, they're generally 2 to 8 minute videos.
Gotcha.
So it's about 2 hours, 2.5 hours of content. And I break it down pretty easily so you can skim around. If you just want to know how to break down a turkey, you can jump to that video, and in 3 minutes, you'll know how to do it.
Yeah. So if you want to, learn how to make a certain side dish or what have you, you can learn that and then move on and great. Well, we'll put a link to that in the description below and with the discount code. So check that out, guys. Check out Jason's website. Is it Amazing Food Made Easy? Is the website name as well?
Yep.
And then Amazing Food Made Easy, or actually Exploring Sous Vide Facebook group. Yeah, if you like sous vide at all, you need to join Exploring Sous Vide. It's one of the biggest, I think it is the largest sous vide related Facebook group on Facebook, and it has a lot of people on there just talking about sous vide all day long. a lot of experts and a lot of people who think they're experts, like me. And
yep.
But definitely check out Jason's stuff and his books on Amazon. He's got a bunch of different sous vide books. Just go into Amazon and search under Jason Logsdon, Logsdon, and you will see a bunch of different books come up under his name. Thanks for joining me again, Jason. I really appreciate it. It's always fun talking, and I hope to see you guys at the Sous Vide Summit in San Francisco next year as well.
Should be a blast, and thanks so much for having me on. It's always great catching up and chatting sous vide.
If I don't talk to you again before then, have a great holiday season, and look forward to doing a lot of sous vide cooking over the holidays for sure.
Awesome. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks again. Well, thanks again for joining us on the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. I want to thank Jason Logsdon again for being on. Make sure you check out his website, Amazing Food Made Easy. Make sure you check out the 2 video courses he has, the Sous Vide Complete Thanksgiving Dinner and also Sous Vide Made Easy. Both of these courses can be had for just $9.50 each if you use the discount code FIREWATER, link below. Thanks for following us. Make sure you follow the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast, the Fire and Water Cooking YouTube channel, and follow us on Facebook on our Fire and Water Cooking page and group, and also follow us on Instagram. And I'll see you again on the next Fire and Water Cooking Podcast.